Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott, I'm the Emperor of Stomaria, and today I want to talk about the differences between becoming an ally of Stomaria and becoming a part of Stomaria. So as you can see, this is once again the nighttime edition. It's just a case of not having enough hours in the day to do this, and it has been a long time since my last video. So again, I just wanted to do this as quickly as possible, just so I don't fall too far behind in terms of the number of videos we put out. I mean, at the very least, I like to do at least one a week. To be honest, I'm aiming closer for 3, but it's just a time constraint. There's a lot going on, there's a lot happening. Not just with like work and family life. Obviously got little Eleanor, and she's a bit of a handful at the best of times, but she's actually feeling unwell and has done for the last few days, so that's not been particularly pleasant. But for now that everyone's asleep, I just wanted to run through something that's been playing on my mind, and something that has been asked of me relatively recently. Because of the Princedom of Moreland becoming an ally of Stomaria, the question has sort of arisen, well, what is the difference between becoming a part of Stomaria as a protectorate, as an associated state, as an observer state, and what is the difference between all of that and simply becoming an ally of Stomaria? So that's something I want to explore in more detail now. So as many people know, the Empire of Stomaria is very much a micronation of micronations, in the sense that we are looking to incorporate and integrate other micronations and other micronationalists into Stomaria as autonomous territories, so retaining their own culture, their own identity, their own form of government, their own way of doing things, but nevertheless forming a larger entity. So they are, becoming more integrated in terms of Stomaria's governments, they're becoming more integrated in terms of the trade network that we're looking to build, and it's all geared towards this empire of commerce, this empire of trade and enterprise. This is what this is our primary focus, this is what we're gearing for, reducing reliance on the macronations in which we're part of by, exchanging produce and services between one another in order to become more self-reliant, more self-sufficient, however you want to describe it. But that's the driving focus of Stomaria, is to build a real world micronational economy in order to build, as close as we can, an alternative society. And having all these, this melting pot of an empire in terms of different cultures and identities coming together for this, unifying factor, for this unifying purpose. That this is what creates the federal monarchy, which is the Empire of Stomaria. And so that begs the question as to what the difference is between that and simply a micronation becoming an ally of the Empire of Stomaria. Because I think justifiably there is, a big question mark about that. I mean, what difference does it actually make? And so I think the fundamental reason, the most obvious differences between the two, and there are benefits to going down either route. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference to us in Stomaria which way you go down. It depends on what your own ideas and your own values and your own objectives are. So as a protectorate or an associated state, an observer state, some of the terms and conditions in that do stipulate, for instance, that you cannot have relations with other micronations without our knowledge and without our say-so. And this might seem quite arbitrary and pointless on the face of it, but there is a very real and pragmatic reason for this, is that if you are forming a part of the Empire of Stomaria, if you're forming part of this federal monarchy, we can't have individual micronations that form a part of Stomaria having their own trade agreements or mutual recognition treaties or alliances or conflicts or whatever else with other micronations outside of Stomaria, because it would be, I suppose the closest equivalent would be, it would be the equivalent of, California, entering into a diplomatic relation with Canada without, the federal government say so, or Wales, declaring war on France or something. It wouldn't make sense for different parts of the empire, of this federal monarchy, of this federal empire, to go and do their own thing in that way. So we have to be restrictive of that. There is the central governing body of Stomaria, which is myself and the imperial court, and then sort of below that you have the individual territories that are run by presidents or princes or kings or governors or whatever else it may be, but they all form part of one empire. And so I suppose foreign relations and would be one of the most important aspects that a micronation would give up in order to become a part of Stomaria. They can obviously have relations with micronations within the Empire of Stomaria in the same way that, I don't know, Wales and England or Texas and New York might have relations of some sort. But again, it's different if you're outside of Stomaria, because you are not a part of Stomaria. And so you can have, as an ally of Stomaria, you can have relations with other micronations. So that's one of the most obvious points to mention, is that if you're a part of Stomaria, you can't have diplomatic relations with other micronations outside of Stomaria, and if you're outside of Stomaria, you can. It is the simple way to put it. So that's the first major point. But the flip side of that is that as a part of the empire, you are far more likely to receive our backing and our funding. And again, the Kingdom of Wayward is a very obvious example of this. They form a part of Stomaria. They are an associated state of Stomaria. In fact, I literally about half an hour ago got off the phone with King Raoul, who we went over quite a few developments within the Kingdom of Wayward, which I'm quite excited to discuss with you in more detail a little later on. But suffice to say, we are providing them with quite a significant amount of funding. So, for instance, we have funding for the removal of pine trees, dangerous or dead trees. At the Kingdom of Wayward, they don't have the funds to hand to take them down, so we are funding the project, that particular project, to take those trees down, to log them, to utilise them, to sell them. And obviously we're also still looking at beehives and bees to be able to produce honey and produce hopefully honeymead later on in the year. But those are sort of things that we are funding because they are a part of Stomaria. They are Stomarian territory. We have a vested interest in making sure that they succeed. Whereas an ally of Stomaria, we're not going to spend hundreds or thousands of pounds on a micronation that does not form a part of our empire. Again, in macronational terms, it would be the equivalent of the federal government of the USA, funding Canada's welfare state or building roads in Canada rather than focusing their attention on, their own states. Again, it's the most obvious example I can think of is, when you have this micronation of micronations, this federal monarchy setup that we have, we're interested, the central governing body of Stomaria is interested in supporting the micronations that form a part of Stomaria over micronations that don't form part of Stomaria. And I think that's just quite a common sense approach to have. So those, I think, are the two most important distinctions to make between becoming a part of the Empire of Stomaria and simply being an ally of Stomaria. Now, there is a slight blur to this. It's not very clear cut because of the nature of the way this works. For instance, the Princedom of Moreland is the first ally that the Empire of Stomaria has ever had, in the sense that we have had formal relations and friendships with other micronations, but this is the first time we've actually had what we define as an ally. And even though that they are an ally, they have nevertheless integrated themselves very quickly into Stomaria, in the sense that they do form a part of Stomaria's government, because Prince Alexander has become a Lord of Stomaria and a member of the Imperial Court, so he is, a part of the advisory body. He's, updated, or will be updated, about the ongoing developments within Stomaria, and get his input on it. And at the same time, he's also very interested in becoming a part of the, or helping to fund the Stomarian stater manufacturing, the minting of these coins. And we are in turn looking to actually have them featured on some of the next batches of Stomarian staters. So again, that's a very, very good way to tie our micronations together. But because they don't actually form a part of Stomaria, they're not an associated state, they're not an observer state, they're not a protectorate, they are able to enter into formal diplomatic relations with other micronations, and we don't have a problem with that. But it also means that we aren't necessarily looking to fund the Princedom of Moreland directly in the same way that we would the Kingdom of Wayward, because we have a different relationship, and that's fine. I mean, like I said, it's all about people's personal preference in terms of what they're hoping to do within the micronational community. If they're looking to build alliances that with micronations that aren't already a part of Stomaria, then being an ally of Stomaria is the best way to go about it, because you can't become an observer state or a protectorate if you are looking to have relations with the micronations outside of Stomaria. Now, when micronations look to become an observer state, an associate state, or a protectorate, once they look to become incorporated into the Empire of Stomaria, we look for several key things. I think there's 5 points. I'm going to see if I can remember off the top of my head. So we're looking regarding that micronation's longevity, consistency, maturity, territory, and suitability. There you go, got it in one. And all of this just revolves around just how suitable you are, how suitable that micronation is, in terms of whether or not they're actually going to be a good fit for the Empire of Stomaria, because we want micronations that have longevity, we want mature micronations that are mature, we want micronations that have consistency, we want micronations that understand the importance of private freehold land as territory. We want micronations that have values and objectives and government structures that will align with our own. These are all very important things to consider. We don't just want any micronation off the street joining the empire. That's not how we want it to work, and so that's not how we have it. Now, in terms of becoming an ally of Stomaria, those factors are still very much in play, because, again, we don't want to just ally with everyone that comes, knocking on our door. And I think this is probably the second part of the video that I want to talk about, is, you could title it, I could make an entire another video about this called Why Stomaria Rejects So Many Alliance Applications, because we do. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, since we've been founded in June 2019, 2 or 3 a week on average we turn down. Not unsurprisingly, many of those don't last much more than a few weeks or a few months, and that's why they were rejected in the first place. But there have been micronations that have approached us in the past, that are still around: the Commonwealth of Dracul, the Empire of Lemark or Lemark. There are lots of micronations that have approached Stomaria about forming an alliance, or a mutual recognition treaty or something to that effect. But for one reason or another, they're either rejected or they fall through, because we've had a long-standing position where if that alliance is not mutually beneficial, if there's no real reason or purpose for that alliance to exist, then we just won't pursue it. So one of our conditions in the case of the Commonwealth of Dracul and the Empire of Limark, I can never remember which one it is. Those two micronations come to mind because those two micronations have approached the Empire of Stomaria before about acquiring some of our silver as building a trade agreement, even on a tokenized basis, just a token gesture to say we've had this trade agreement on this one occasion or two occasions, and so we can now have a formal alliance. That would have been enough, but for one reason or another, that didn't happen. And this was all prior to the minting of the Stomarian state. This was back when we were using generic silver bullion. So this was quite some time ago. But again, the reason that we reject these alliances or these alliance applications fall through is simply because we need a real world reason to do so. I despise mutual recognition treaties. They're so pointless, because you could have them with any number of micronations, but what value does it bring to your project? What value does it add to the community to go, if everyone has a mutual recognition treaty with each other, what does that honestly accomplish? Now, if everyone has a genuine trading relationship with one another, that is something that's laudable. That is something that's accomplishing something, in our eyes at least. I mean, not all micronations are gunning for the same thing. Not all micronations are looking to build a real-world community. Not all micronations are looking to build a trade network. Not all micronations are looking to attain some degree of self-reliance, but we are. And so if a micronation is not going to add value to the project, and if we feel that we can't add value to their project, then we just don't take it any further, because it's not necessary. It'll be a waste of time. It's just one more micronation to keep track of in terms of, do they still exist? Have they still got the same name? Has their flag changed? Do I need to update the website again because they've changed their flag and name and style of government and leader and whatever else? We've got to be selective with the number of micronations that we do take on board. And that's why we have these criteria. This is why we have to check these boxes, because, if we just open the doors to everyone, then we're going to have a very messy foreign relations program. And trying to keep everything as concise and neat and tidy and consistent as possible is very important to us, because there's nothing worse than having to say we have formed an alliance with this person or this micronation, or we have incorporated this micronation into the empire, and then 2 weeks later or less, we have to say, actually, it's all fallen through, they've gone, they've dissolved, they've split, or they've had a civil war, or whatever else it is. So we've got to make sure that we have the right people involved. So again, that's just something that I wanted to mention, because I get so many applications, or we get so many applications from people wanting to become a part of the Empire of Stomaria, or wanting to ally with Stomaria, or wanting a mutual recognition treaty with the Empire of Stomaria. But it's nothing personal. It's just, we're looking for something more meaningful than that. We're looking for something that actually adds value to the project. So yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything that I want to cover for this particular video. So if you did want to form a part of the Stomarian community, then please feel free to become a citizen through our Patreon campaign, the link of which I shall leave in the description below as always. But obviously, if you want to go further than that, you do want to become an ally of Stomaria, you think you can add some value to Stomaria, then please do feel free to get in touch, because we will consider your application as we do all applications out there. Or if you want to not become an ally, you want to be incorporated in Stomaria in some way, then again, just let us know. But again, either or for us, as long as it's adding to that real world community, adding to that real world trade network, or the establishment of that real world trade network, that's what we're looking to do. It just depends which avenue you prefer to go down. But yeah, otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to give it a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.